Hello and welcome to another FlashBlack anime manga review blog thing. I'm your FlashBlack. Why is it FlashBlack? Because we're flashing back and I'm black. Uh, Today was really hard for me in terms of what I wanted to review because uh, I was going to do kind of like a volume by volume review of like one of my favorite manga series, even though it's already ended, just so I kind of, like in case I have nothing to review at the moment, that way I can just be like, oh, here's something, here's, how it is. There's first volume, second volume, third volume, and so it goes on until like the very end when the rest of the manga comes out here in America. But uh, I decided not to do that because this week I do like a weekly live stream kind of thing. I do it like Tuesdays and Thursdays every week, and this week I streamed one of my absolute favorite series, and really the very first series I ever actually got into, the series that really started my manga collection, and that would be Rumiko Takahashi's Ranma One Half. Uh, Ranma holds an extremely special place in my heart. It is like it was really the first manga just by itself that I ever got. I collected the Shonen Jumps for a while, and I stopped like sometime in middle school or like early high school or something like that. Uh, uh, don't know why, but with Ranma, it was like one of the very first things I remember. I was like late at night one night. My dad and I were coming out of movie theater or something. Barnes and Noble is like right near the movie theaters where I live. So I'm like, let's go to Barnes and Noble so I can get a book or whatever. He's like, okay. So I'm going to like the manga section because I already knew about manga. I knew where to find it. And actually, let me rephrase that. Run One Half is like the second manga series I really actually got into, and I'm not counting Shonen Jump as a manga that itself because it's a collection of manga. Uh, but the first real manga series that I really started collecting was Inuyasha, and they didn't have any of that there or something like that. It actually it's either Run One Half or Inuyasha. It's one of the two. It was Rumiko Takahashi that really started me off. But I was browsing through the area and I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. And it was volume one of Run One Half. So I asked Dad to buy it for me. And this was all the way back in, when was this? This was all the way back. It was either very late elementary school or very early middle school. I'm pretty sure it was very early middle school. Like my first year of middle school, probably, I got this. And it really was like the very first manga series I ever completed and read the entire way through. So I thought for my fifth review, I don't know, significant number for me because I'm doing this on a weekly basis. I've stuck through this five whole week, so that's for me. Commitment is, yeah, kind of, But I was like, why don't I do something special for today's review? And so that's Run One Half. Run One Half came out. Ooh, when did Run One Half come out? It's been around since I want to say late '80s, early to mid '90s. Yeah, no, yeah, 1988. This was first published, and it is by far it is one of Rumiko Takahashi's most famous works. And Run One Half is a very large fan base here in America, which is kind of surprising considering how old it is. But I'm pretty sure Dragon Ball predates it or came out or something like that. Uh, but uh, little kind of brief history for I think I have not seen Maison Ikoku, but I have seen Ursa Yatsura. And from what Rumiko Takahashi said in like kind of her regards to Ron was that she wanted to do a male protagonist because apparently uh, the folk the in Ursa Yatsura, the focal character, it wasn't even though Ataru was really kind of like the first character we were introduced to, Lum was the main character and is really like the mascot of the entire series. Like I said, I haven't seen Maison Ikoku, so I can't speak for that. But for Ranma, she wanted to do kind of like a male character or male and female character. So, and that's where this came into. So, basic summary of the series, it focuses on Ranma Saotome, who is a 16-year-old martial artist, and years before he was born, his father Genma, his father practiced martial arts with his best friend Son Tendo, and they both made an agreement that one day they would, when they had kids, their children would marry, and their children would then carry on their martial arts school, which is like the Tendo Saotome School of Anything Goes Martial Arts, or Instrument Grappling, or what have you. However, it's really kind of translated varies. Uh, and so, fast forward years later, So Nintendo has three daughters, but while Genma Saotome has one son. And that one son would be Ranma, who is, but when Ranma is first introduced to the Tendo girls, which consists of the eldest daughter, Kasumi Tendo, who is really the housekeeper, the very housewife. She's out of school. She only takes care of the house and everything. Uh, very Yamato Nadeshiko, very much that stereotype, that character archetype, whatever. The middle, she's 19. There's the middle daughter, Nabiki Tendo, who is 17, still in high school, and probably the smartest character in the entire series. And then there's the youngest daughter, Akane Tendo, who is the tomboy, very much tsundere character, probably one of the most iconic tsundere characters, probably next to Asuka from Evangelion. Uh, but the thing is that when Ranma gets to the Tendo, the training hall, they are very shocked to discover that Ranma's a girl. Uh, and so Ranma and Akane kind of hit it off with each other. They have like a very brief little sparring match, and Akane says, I'm really glad that you're a girl because I would really hate to lose to a boy. And Ranma already said, like, Akane had said, like, start of the episode, start of the manga, I hate boys. That this whole thing wouldn't be, it wasn't her thing, and she was the most against this whole thing because this like 16 years old and now it's being thrown on you. Oh yeah, you're engaged to marry some man you've never met. So, you know. But so everyone is really under the assumption that Rams are going, including the audience for the most part. Until one part where Ranma goes into the bathtub, and Akane sees Ranma's clothes in the hamper, goes into the bathroom, but she sees the boy there. And so it is then revealed that Ranma and his father Genma had crossed into China during their training journey mission, whatever, and they came across the Chinese training ground of Curse Springs called Jusenkyo. And at Jusenkyo, there are thousands of little springs, and each spring has its own like tragic story attached to it. Something drowned in each spring set 1,000 years ago, whatever. And so it's believed that whatever if anyone falls into any of those springs, they take the form of whatever it is that drowned there. When Ranma and his father went there, neither one of them could read or understand Chinese in the least. But to hell with that, thought Ranma's father. Ranma knocked his father into the spring of drowned panda, and when Ranma's father first appears in the series, he's this very large panda, and Ranma, caught by surprise, was knocked into the spring of drowned girl. So that explains the whole confusion of that. And in the end, like at the very end of the first chapter in the first episode, I think it's sort of the end of the second chapter, near the end of the second chapter, still first episode. After the Tendos get all the information about this, and they discover that hot water is the key. The curse works by when Ranma and his father are splashed with cold water, they swap forms. Ranma goes from male to female when he's splashed with cold water. Genma goes from human to panda. But hot water will reverse the effect. So Mr. Tendo offers Ranma, says, "Here, pick pick whichever one of my daughters you'd like to marry." And both Kasumi and Hibiki say that they passed the engagement off to Akane. Uh, and she's like, "Well, why should I have to be the one to marry him?" And they're like, "Well, because you hate boys, and so Ranma is only a man half the time, which is why it's called Ranma one half. He's half man, half woman." Yeah. Uh, and the thing with the series is that, and that's a very kind of basic description, because I'm not even getting into like the later stuff, because most of it is just like wacky hijinks galore and everything. Uh, the series has really no set plot. It's more of, Akane and Ranma kind of trying to get along with each other, and you know hijinks ensue for the most part. Uh, but overall, there really isn't like a set storyline. It's very episodic. Both the anime and the manga are. The manga more so, because the manga stretched on for 38 volumes in Japan, as compared in comparison to the 36 here in America. So for a series like that to be as episodic as it was and carry on for that long, uh, uh, it is very much like, if you've read Yurusei Yatsura, Ranma really is kind of a very, I think, very kind of distinct kind of callback to that, because I have read all of Yurusei Yatsura, and it is extremely episodic in nature. Like, each chapter, for the most part, focuses on something. It focuses on the same characters, just in kind of a different circumstances, different situations for the most part, and kind of just dealing with the characters and their lives. So the thing, I really wouldn't call Ranma a slice of life series, which are those series that really tend to focus on school life, because Ranma is more of, the Ranma one half is very martial arts oriented, so there are a lot of different martial arts styles that all the different characters practice. So there is a lot of action. You can't go 38 volumes with fluff. Even Yurusei Yatsura went, I don't even know how many volumes that went on for, but there was a lot of, the Yurusei Yatsura was far more comedy than Ranma was. Ranma had it wasn't equally proportioned, but there were some very serious storylines that really did kind of tie plot lines and everything together. Uh, and so that's how that works. So Ranma uses a lot of uh, action, comedy, a lot of etchy fan service type stuff. Uh, but it's nothing too over the top. It's a very enjoyable series. Let's see. Now, what would I say the strengths, or like, I guess, do I really want to get into like the art of the anime and the manga? The art is very Rumiko Takahashi. That's really all I can say about that. Is like, if you've seen Rumiko Takahashi's series, like if you've seen like Inuyasha, and then you like see Ranma or Yurusei Yatsura, Maison Hill, you're like, oh, that looks exactly like uh this series by her. So her art style is very consistent, very much the same. Uh, and looking back at Yurusei Yatsura, it really shows where all these characters came from. That's one of the things I really like. I like about Rukutaku's series is that all of her characters, for the most part, are very distinct callbacks to her previous characters. Like Akane, for example, is a very distinct callback to Shinobu Miyake. I guess now I'm getting, like, I like the callback of the characters, kind of. The Kane is a very distinct callback to Shinobu Miyake from Yurusei Yatsura. They look similar to each other. Their personalities are similar, but they're different. But they are different characters. Uh, Ranma is kind of a more extreme version of Ryunosuke Fujinami, who was the character in Yurusei Yatsura that was was a girl raised to be a boy by her father, so she looked a lot like a boy and dressed like a man, even though she wasn't. Uh, let's see. Kuno is a callback to Mendo. Shitaru Kadachi is a callback to Shitaru's sister, Ryoko. Uh, and even Shampoo herself Rumi Kadachi said that Shampoo was supposed to be like an improved version of Lum. So there's definitely a lot of like, oh, that's those like that kind of like the same character, but not. Uh, that's very good thing about it. I like how the series looks. I like how the characters are kind of they're very like if you've seen Yurusei Yatsura before watching Ranma, it's kind of like watching a different version of Yurusei Yatsura for the most part. The characters are very you get a very familiar feeling from them. Let's see what else do I like. I love the characters themselves in Run One Half. Run One Half is a series where where a lot of the characters are really only in it for themselves. There are very few characters in the series whose goals and aspirations are inherently benign or, for the good of anybody else. I would say Run One Half is a very good balance of plot-based and character-based scenarios. Like, certain events of the plot happen just because of the plot, but a lot of the stuff is the characters kind of forced upon themselves, especially Ranma's character. Ranma's character, like, a lot of the shit that happens to him, it's really kind of, well, if you hadn't done this, this wouldn't be happening, but then again, Ranma's very forgetful of things that aren't martial arts related, so that's kind of his whole thing. It's not martial arts, I'm not interested in it. Like, the only characters in the series that aren't motivated by some kind of selfish personal gain kind of thing are Sumi, Ranma's mother Nodoka, Dr. Tofu, and slightly Akane. Those are really the four characters of the series with like most uh, the most overall compassion, and like they are like the most humane characters of the entire cast. The rest of the cast of Ron One Half really kind of varies from like the sadistic ones, the sadistic businesswoman like Nabiki, the middle sister, to the perverted and downright evil Haposai, to the wise and old clone, and then you have all the various other characters that play into it. So that's one thing. I love how the characters interact with each other. Is the other thing. In the manga, the relationship between Ranma and Akane, it does progress to a very stable friendship kind of area. They don't hate each other, but they don't. They're not like best friends. That's more like what Ranma and another later character Ukyo are. Ranma knew Ukyo long before he knew Akane, but didn't know that she was a girl. Thought it was a boy. So when she comes back into the series, they get along very well with each other. And Ranma treats her like he would treat like just a regular guy friend. And even like okay, I guess I should really kind of say this now. Is that the thing about Ranma One Half that it really does that Ranma One Half is something of a harem series. I say something of a harem series because it has the typical harem formula where you have one man who has captured the romantic interests of four women. But Ranma's case is very, very unique in that many characters, many of the major characters that appear in the series, all have some kind of romantic type involvement with another character. So you have Ranma. Ranma is at the very center of everything. Ranma is engaged to Akane Tendo, Ukyo Konji, and Shampoo. And then you have Kodachi Kuno, who just lusts after Ranma. Then you have Kodachi's brother Kuno, who hates the male Ranma but lusts after his female form. And likewise, Kodachi lusts after the male form, and they don't know that the two forms they are respectively in love with and hate are the same person. Kuno also lusts after Akane, uh, who had eyes for Dr. Tofu earlier in the series, who only had eyes for Kasumi, who's kind of uh, up in the air for the most part. Then you have Ryoga Hibiki, who hates Ranma, but they kind of come to like a friendship type uh, understanding with each other, who loves Akane, and kind of has a lot of good subtext with Ukyo, but she only loves Ranma. And then you have Moose, who hates Ranma, but is in love with Shampoo, while Shampoo hates Moose. Then you have Haposai, who lusts after every woman, uh, and kind of had a thing with Cologne, who pretty much despises Haposai now. So TV Tropes describes Ranma as probably, I think, the trope codifier, if not the outright trope namer, for the love dodecahedron, where it's a very multi-angled love shape of some sort. Every character has some kind of romantic ties to another one. Uh, and so that's it. Another thing I really have to give the series is that when Ranma One Half does do romance, because Ranma One Half is a very comedy-oriented series, when it does decide to like buckle down and do some romantic development, it shows. Like you know that Ranma and Akane really do love each other underneath all their griping and bitching at one another. It's just so hard for each of them to really kind of come to terms with that in and of itself and say it to the other person. And then half the time when they actually do decide to do it, fate intervenes at some point, and some contrived coincidence comes along, and then there goes the moment. Uh, so that's that. Another thing I have to give the series credit for is that it's aged. It is Ron One has aged pretty well. Uh, Ron One Half isn't really a series that really goes out of its way to tell you when it takes place. But I mean, but just judging from the animation style of it and the look of the manga, you can tell it's pretty old. Uh, but it never really, excuse me, it doesn't exactly feel like it's some like super old series, like Yurusei Yatsura, that distinctly took place in the 80s, like 70s, 80s, and you could tell with all the shit that was going on, okay, this is like that 70s, 80s era, especially for like Sailor Pukas they were using. Very much a trademark of like the 80s in Japan. Further on that, look at Sailor Moon, which took place around the same time period. So Ron One Half doesn't exactly date itself. There's never any indication as to when the series takes place. But it's if you really kind of look at the stuff they do and you look at like the very much like the lack of like modern technology, you can tell okay, this is a bit older, but it has aged. Ron One Half has aged pretty well. The animation is the animation is very much Ruben Hahashi as well. Like everything that Ruben Hahashi has animated, it all looks very similar. Even like with the exception of Yurusei Yatsura's like a long time through the Yurusei Yatsura it had a very kind of Western kind of cartoonish look to it, but it still felt a lot like an anime. Whereas Ron One Half Mezani Koku and Inuyasha, they all look like an anime for the most part. While Yurusei Yatsura kind of blurs that line a little bit, but not too much. Like you can tell it's an anime, but it kind of looks like it could be a Western cartoon a little bit. What else is the good? What else is the good part of the series? I would give the series credit for its fights. Run One Half has some of the most creative fights ever devised. I swear to God, these people have turned everything into a martial art. Like take Kodachi Kuno for example. She does martial arts rhythmic gymnastics. Another character does martial arts cheerleading. And then there's martial arts tea ceremony, martial arts dining, martial arts calligraphy, martial arts shogi. And no, I'm not making that up. I couldn't if I tried. I swear to God. Uh, and all the characters in the series are all for the most part. The characters in the series are vastly kind of overpowered, but it's very much played for comedy. Like, oh look, random destruction of property, haha, it's funny, and it kind of is. So the fights in Round One Half are very well put together. They're very the situations maybe feel a tad bit forced. Like take one of the very early ones, where Ranma goes up against Kodachi. Uh, like looking at it, it's kind of like that was a very much that was a very plot contrived fight for the series, because if that ball hadn't been in the way when Akane was practicing with Ranma, then she'd be the one fighting Kodachi. But it still ended up working out in the end. Again, it was a pretty good fight. And then you have like the fight, like the very early fights between like Ranma and Kuno were also pretty good. Ranma and Ryoga's fights are always pretty well done, and all like the various martial arts styles that get introduced in the series. When Ranma does get challenge those people and is learning the styles and the techniques and everything, and eventually does get like the great battle with them, it comes off as it's very well done. Excuse me. And that's one of the things I love about Ranma as a protagonist, is that a lot of show I know I say this a lot and it probably get some viewers there, but it's true. Shonen heroes really don't have a very good excuse for being as vastly overpowered in comparison to the other characters as they are. I'm sorry, that's just something I believe in from the bottom of my heart. There may be things going on around them that kind of justify why they would be so powerful, but really it's kind of like Ranma is kind of like Kenshin, where I said Kenshin was a very justified example of being a powerful protagonist, because Kenshin was 28 years old and he had fought in a war with a nearly unbeatable sword style that, given his physical stature, they even say this in the manga, he should not be able to use. Period. And that becomes kind of a plot point later on. Ranma, on the other hand, the style that he practices is anything goes martial arts. Ranma, in comparison to some of the other characters, is a very fast learner. He picks things up, especially their martial arts. He picks them up insanely quickly. That sounds stupid. He picks them up extremely fast. So, given his skill in martial arts at the start of the series, it's really no surprise to see that when he does buckle down and practice these styles or whatever for what little time he does have to practice with them, it's not too much of a stretch to see, oh, he actually did manage to pull that off. And Ranma does kind of incorporate a lot of the stuff he gets from other fighting styles into his martial arts. Because the style is anything goes. The anything goes martial arts takes from other martial arts and kind of incorporates it into like a mixed martial arts bag, whatever. And then especially once Cologne, and that's another thing about Ranma Half, is that while Ranma is the protagonist, he is not in the least the strongest character in the series. The strongest characters in Ranma Half are Shampoo and Ranma's primary rival, Ryoga. Shampoo, just to give you like a bit of just to give you kind of a scale, Shampoo can walk through concrete and metal as if it were wet tissue paper. Ryoga can cause insane amounts of property damage with his fingers when flustered or embarrassed or shy or anything like that. And then that's not even touching on like Haposai and Cologne, who've been around since like what Cologne's been like one of the dubs, like she was there like the birth of Christ. So those characters, obviously, with their age, they're far more powerful than Ron is. But he still manages to triumph in the end. Uh, and then I think the thing that really kind of works well for the series is that it's not a clear-cut good versus evil series like a lot of other shonen series are, where it's like protagonists and antagonists that are very clearly defined. He's the hero, he's the villain, she's the heroine, she's the villainess. So with that, it's more like episodic little scuffles with the characters. The various characters of the series kind of act as little antagonists every now and then, but overall, everyone's really kind of in this game for their own personal benefit. It's mainly for the sake of getting with that one person they want to get with, but we all know that it's not really going to happen. So those are like a lot of the positives Ranma 1/2. The negatives, and Ranma 1/2 does have negatives. It has a few of them. Like the most glaring example of negatives I have of the most glaring example of a negative I have from Ranma 1/2 is that the comedy in Ranma 1/2 and a lot of it becomes very repetitive. And Ranma 1/2 is an anime that stretches on for 7 seasons. The manga carries on for 38 volumes in Japan, and 36 here in America. And it is kind of hard to keep a reader's attention when you're just kind of reusing and rehashing the same kind of slapstick shit that you started in the very first volume. Well, there it's like, oh yeah, that's funny, that's great, that's kind of like a new way to do this kind of whatever. Once you get to like volume 20, you're like, okay, cue Ranma getting caught in some compromising situation. Cue Akane walking in and jumping to some conclusion. Cue Akane beating the shit out of Ranma and sending him flying off the screen. You can kind of time it out for the most part. But to the series' credit, the repetitive nature of it kind of works well with the series. Even Yurusei Yatsura, I think a lot of Ranma series get repetitive like that, and I think they're meant to be, and because there's nothing wrong with being repetitive with stuff in a series, because let's face it, a lot of anime get very repetitive, and a lot of manga get repetitive. They kind of rely on the same gags to be used over and over and over and over again. And it's just kind of finding a way to make that funnier the next time you use it. With Ranma, it's really like, how bad can you make him look, kind of, like how far will Akane stretch what this looks like, So it's kind of like a plus and a negative all in of itself, the repetitive nature of it. Let's see, what else would I say is a negative of the series? I guess really the characters and their personalities are a pretty glaring negative, especially looking at Akane, for example. And like I've kind of fought a little. I kind of got into a little bit with one person on YouTube, or whatever. It was mostly just me making very long, repetitive comments over and over again about Akane, and that most of the time with the tsundere character, it gets very old very fast watching her just kind of be all soon like, oh, I'm just going to beat the shit out of you because you're doing something that looks stupid or perverted or something like that. And then later on, I'll be like, oh, kind and caring and affectionate with you and everything, But what I always do in those situations, there's a tsundere character in the series. What I do with every series is I look at situations from the character's point of view. So, in a way, I kind of justify it for myself. I'm like, okay, so that's why. Akane is my primary example because, given everything she has to put up with, Akane is extremely justified in her actions and kind of the punishment she dishes out towards Ranma. Like, not even getting into, like, the emotional aspect of it. It's a martial arts comedy series. So it's only natural that the characters are going to be beating the shit out of each other on a regular basis, for slapstick humor. But with Akane and Ranma's relationship, it's very much like neither one is inherently innocent in the situation for the most part. Like a lot of it is because of a lot of it can be pinned on Ranma himself, yes, because Ranma is very blunt. He says exactly what he's thinking for the most part, and he's going to say he often says his very true and honest opinions on things, especially when it comes to Akane. He does that kind of mask my feelings and make it seem like I hate you when I actually like you kind of thing. I don't know. So most of the time when he ends up in some kind of compromising situation, it's always like, wait, look, let me explain. It's not what it looks like. And Akane very quickly gets angry and then beats the shit out of him. Given so there's that. But let's see what the hell is going on with Akane's life. Akane has no mother, so she never learned how to be feminine for the most part, or she kind of did learn, but later, like only after she kind of had an incentive to. Uh, so there's that. Then let's look at what like some of Akane's major faults are. Her temper. Akane is extremely quick to anger. Her temper is like extremely short fuse that one. And that short fuse is not helped in the fact that Ranma and his other fiancés and other characters push her buttons. So there's that. There's also the fact that Akane is very insecure about herself. Akane doesn't believe that she looks very pretty. She doesn't. She knows that she can't cook. She's not overly feminine. She knows she's a tomboy. She knows that really her only kind of saving grace is her martial arts ability. Uh, and Akane has the most untapped potential out of any of the characters in the series. They did that in the manga as well. Um, so and Ranma in his interaction with her, he doesn't do much to help make her feel better about herself because Ranma is a man who turns into a female, and Ranma in its female form has a much better proportion, has a much better body. All the curves are in very much the right places, and that kind of it's one of those things played for comedy in a way. Oh look, Ranma's boobs are bigger than Akane's are, and Akane's underwear and clothes are like too tight and baggy on Ranma, like in the bust and the waist department. So that's that kind of stuff on, you know. And then there's the fact that Akane can't have a normal relationship with the boy. First of all, because of Kuno and his announcement he made at school, where if you want to date Akane Tenno, you must defeat her in battle. So that kind of blows any shot of her kind of seeking a regular relationship with anyone out the water. And then two, there's the fact that now, out of the blue, 16 years into her life, she's told, "Hey, you're being, engaged to some guy you never met, and this guy happens to have all the social grace of a cow." So, you know, so the characters and their kind of repetitive little ticks and everything, I can see that as a glaring negative because let's face it, not all the characters are extremely likable. There's going to be that one character in Wrong One Out that you absolutely hate. Uh, so that's that. What other negatives are there in regards to the series? Hmm. I would guess there's the fact that many of the characters in Wrong One Out have the Jisenkyo curses inflicted on them, and the thing is that they always complain about, oh, I'm cursed with this body. If I could go back and undo this curse, life would be perfect. And so that would mean in essence traveling from Japan to China. Ranma and his father and Ryoga crossed from Japan to China by foot and by swimming. Uh, and I'll assume the same way of shampoo, although her great grandma was in Amazon, so they probably got like a boat to Japan or something like that. Uh, so that's that whole thing where you're it's like you're bitching about something that really all you have to do is take the time and the initiative to kind of just pack your bags and go on a trip to China to resolve. So that's that. Especially in Rama's situation where he's like, oh, I hate having this curse on me. I'm a freak. I turned into a girl, and when he's using that curse for his very much his own personal selfish gain. Uh, so a lot of the characters come off as extremely petty, that's very true. Many of the characters Rama have are petty and jealous and prone to over exaggerating things. That's that. I would say another flaw of the series is kind of the harem aspect of it, in that Ranma continually just brushes off the advances of the other girls. But he does the same thing with Akane at the same time, where Ranma doesn't show, for the most part, a whole lot of outward love and affection and like care for Akane. He kind of treats her like a friend, or like an acquaintance. Kind of that very casual acquaintance. But with Shampoo and Kodachi, he like brushes them off like they're nuisances, and then with Ukyo, he treats her like she's a god. So that's that, and so there's that. But then, hey, no one in the series is really like as pie as they're made out to be, except for before I mentioned the start, Kazumi, Tofu, uh, shit, there was another one I listed. Oh yeah, Ranma's mom and slightly Akane. So I'm counting that as like 3.5. So that's that. I guess that's really about it for negatives. I know there are a lot more, and other people can probably find more negatives than I can. But like I said, this is an extremely important series for me. This is like really kind of what really kind of kickstarted my manga uh, interest, obsession for the most part. So now it really comes down to like in conclusion, Ron One Half is a slapstick romantic comedy action somewhat drama-ish series. If you can stand repetitive comedy and slapstick and romantic escapades, then you're in for, and then the occasional martial arts battle here and there. You're in for something. Uh, I would give Run One Half a 7 out of 10. This has been another FlashBlack anime manga review, and I'll see you next Friday. Thanks for joining me, and rate and comment below.